Joe Biden recently got a lot of heat because in a recent interview with Reuters, he wanted to take a middle ground approach to climate change. Now, as we know, based on countless studies that have come out, we can't take a middle ground approach. Climate change is something that we need to do something about right now, and we need to take drastic measures. And so it is interesting that after he said that, and after he got the backlash, he is now putting out his version of climate change action. So this is his proposal, what he would do as president when it comes to climate change. And there are portions of it that are good. It seems like he took portions of it from other proposals, literally, and we'll get to that later. But here's what we know. On day one, Biden will sign a series of new executive orders with unprecedented reach that will go well beyond the Obama-Biden administration platform and put us back on the right track. He will not only recommit the United States to the Paris Agreement on climate change, he will go much further. Now, I'm reading you exactly what the Biden campaign has put out there. Of course, they're gonna say great things about it, but what does it actually include? Well, he would like to eliminate net carbon dioxide emissions by 2050. Which is similar language that we see in the Green New Deal. So far so good. Enforced mandate to ensure emissions are being cut, possibly in the form of tax penalties. So the proposal he put out does not go into a lot of specific details on enforcement, but a possible tax penalty could be one of the enforcement mechanisms. Job training for those who currently work in the fossil fuel industry. So obviously we would need to transition them into renewable energy jobs, and then curb trade with countries who pollute too much. So those are the major tenets of what we saw from his proposal. But I wanna go to you first, Ramesh, because what do you think about this? I mean, based on some of these portions of the proposal, it's not necessarily a middle ground approach.
Right.
What I'm curious about is, does he mean it? I mean, it seems to be a little bit of a reversal.
I think that's the question, Anna and Maz. I mean, I think that it's not clear. You have to examine candidates also by their record. What happens, when push comes to shove, when they have an opportunity to actually vote for something or introduce legislation, when they aren't pressured, like what we see happening here by candidates like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, to really not just stand in the middle, right? To really take a stand on these issues. I do think it's interesting that Biden hasn't signed on to the Green New Deal. And I think that speaks to continuing to inhabit this middle ground. I do think it's a great thing, though, that he is being pushed to actually recognize in a very substantive way the realities of climate change, and the fact that in climate change crises come all sorts of opportunities to regrow the economy, to set the planet on the right course, to protect vulnerable people and communities who are on the front lines of being affected by climate change, not just in our country, but globally. So I do think that it's good that he's being pushed this way, but I'll believe it when it happens.
Right, I mean, I think it is true that we see a lot of talk, and what's important is we see a record, which for Biden, there isn't much there when it comes to climate change. Obama did do some good when it came to climate change, not nearly enough. But I just, look, I think this is a good sign, right? But I think it's also really important to be skeptical of not just Biden, but everyone who's running for president, right? Anyone who runs for president who says they're gonna do all these miraculous things, you have to do a little investigation to see how sincere and genuine they are. And just last weekend, California held its Democratic convention. And there were a number of progressive candidates, Bernie Sanders being one of them, who touched on this issue. And I wanna show you what he said specifically in regard to Biden's previous comments on climate change.
As you all know, there is a debate among presidential candidates who have spoken to you here in this room, and those who have chosen for whatever reason not to be in this room. We cannot go back to the old ways. We have got to go forward with a new and progressive agenda. We have got to make it clear that when the future of the planet is at stake, there is no middle ground. We will take on the fossil fuel industry and transform our energy system.
So you hear the reaction, the crowd's cheering. Is there a possibility that maybe progressives did push Biden in the right direction, and maybe he is being sincere, maybe he's evolved on the issue?
Well, I mean, that's obviously the case here, right? Yeah. He just called Biden old because, like, Joe Biden's so old when climate change didn't exist when Joe Biden was in the Senate. Joe Biden's so old.
Pretty good.
No, Joe Biden, I love him. Listen, I think one of the problems I have is that he's got an issue, another executive order. And so anytime we get another guy like a climate denier like Trump in, then he does his order, and it feels like we're playing ping pong. Yeah. And wouldn't it be great if we could push this? The progressives could push Congress and the Senate, which I don't know if the Senate's going to go along with it, but to actually put in laws that then can't be bounced around this fast.
That's a great point, because I think we have to make the case as progressives, but also the politicians who claim to be progressive, or at least the ones who take what we stand for, and make the case to the American people that the disruption, if you will, of these traditional industries like fossil fuel that are really bad in lots of different ways is not an attack on the workers even in those industries. Coal miners are gonna be put to work with much better jobs, much better paying jobs, much safer jobs in relation to the Green New Deal. So actually, 99% of people are going to be empowered by a progressive climate plan. And that's the case we have to make to everybody rather than these little ticky-tack plans. And I do note that Bernie Sanders has never said that I'm going to just do an executive action. He's going to try to make the case.
Great.
Right, exactly, which is why he is very supportive of the Green New Deal, obviously. I mean, he's part of it.
And he's voted,
yes.
His voting record speaks a lot, right?
Yes, yeah. I love the point about congressional action. That's a more foolproof way, a more secure way of ensuring that these policies don't get struck down in the future by, let's say, God forbid, we have an even worse president than Trump, someone who has no problems. Well, Trump has scrapped everything, so I don't know if they could get worse, but I didn't think it could get worse after Bush, and it got worse.
You're right. People want Bush back.
Yeah,
right?
So don't challenge the Republicans.
Bring back Bush. My Green Deal is going to be so green. I'm going to have the Riddler will be my spokesperson because he wears green. And I don't know. I don't know. That's bad. I need a writer. I need a writer.
By the way, and I also want to just quickly note that the head of the executive director of the Sunrise Movement did put out a positive statement that I just want to quickly read to you. Let's go to graphic 20. He put out a comprehensive climate plan that cites the Green New Deal and names climate change as the greatest challenge facing America and the world. So he did get a little credit from the Sunrise Movement. What do you think about that?
I think it's great, and this is actually, I think, a point. I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because it's social movements, it's community-driven movements that actually force these politicians, the ones who aren't just kind of honest and legitimate, I think, for many years, like Sanders and Warren. It really forces the issue. It shows that the people aren't going to back down from these issues, and the Sunrise Movement has gotten a lot of steam, right? Just like some of the other movements we've seen come to bear with the election of Trump. And so this is what gives me a lot of hope here, that things can be pushed in a pro-people, pro-planet, pro-work, way, pro-workers way.
And going back to what you said earlier about how Trump spins this stuff, it's interesting how when the Green New Deal was proposed, he turned it around and said, oh, this crazy deal, there won't be airplanes or cows, which meant like you can't have hamburgers, and I guess that's what it means, right? But it's like people were like, what, no cows? Oh, this is a horrible deal.
See, again, it's how you sell things, right? Back to our previous discussion about containing packages, memes, these terms that Trump uses. He's a good salesman.
Yes.
The thing is, these policies that actually most Americans would agree on, I would say probably at least 80% of Americans would agree on them because they benefit 99% of Americans, are actually ones we really need to figure out how to sell them in the right way, in a compelling way.
He's good at personalizing things. They're gonna take your hamburgers away. And Americans love hamburgers, so
we're gonna still eat our hamburgers. We're just also gonna not pollute as much. It's a net issue.
How do you propose we sell it though? Because I agree with you that it's what needs to be done. I don't think that we're reaching the right wing enough to debunk the narrative that we're seeing from right-wing media and from the fossil fuel industry and the deep pockets of the Coke industry. What do we do? How do we make it more personable?
Great
more
question.
hamburgers, more airplanes. With reusable energy, we can get more burgers with fries for every citizen. I don't know, in America, that's what I propose. Burgers and steak for everybody. I don't know.
I mean, I think it's such a good question, but I think the key is control over language. Language really matters because language travels, especially online, right? Mm-hmm. So like the right language should describe what we're thinking about, and that's a big part of it. But I think it's also just really making it very clear to Americans what this kind of Green New Deal world would look like. What are those jobs going to look like? What are people going to get paid? How is this going to combat the reality that even though unemployment is down and wages are up, actually those wages are not nearly good enough. People are making less than their parents did, and they're not able to afford the basic necessities of living, like the social contract we thought we signed up for. So we got to present characters, stories. We need our filmmakers and our artists, and we don't need to make it sound like it's some liberal democratic thing. This is a pro-people policy, because this is going to affect everybody, these climate change issues. So we have an opportunity here.
2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.